Hello retro fans! As already mentioned in the last episode, today we're going to talk about the SRAM64 mod for the C64, and my intention was to cover all the available SRAM modifications I have already, but I think this is going to blow up the episode a little bit, and therefore I decided to have one episode about the SRAM64 for the normal or newer C64 boards, like the 2050 469 board, as well as the reloaded MK1. And as soon as I have built the other SRAM mods for the older board, like the 466, 425 and 47 and Commodore 128, then I will create another episode talking about those other two SRAM mods. So what it's all about, let's have a look at the board itself we're talking about. Here we can see it already, and as mentioned, we're going to talk about the 250 469 board, and we talk about the area especially. Let's move on to just a small view here. So now we are in the mood. And as mentioned, we talk about the 469 board and the reloaded MK2, which is just above or below this board. And the DRAM is located especially in this area. So we got two ICs here, and that's going to be the very same for the reloaded MK2, where we have two sockets here, and basically here we have two similar DRAM ICs like on this board. And basically on the newer boards this is not very likely to fail, but I would say perhaps 3 or 4 out of 10 broken 469 boards have RAM issues, besides some CR problems, which is pretty common for all the C64 boards. And therefore it's very nice to have a good replacement. And fortunately one guy from the SRAM64 spent some time developing this SRAM replacement, and his name is Knusis, and I will post a link to the thread in the comment section or in the description section, and therefore you will get all the information as long as you are able to at least read German or translate German to English. And just as mentioned in the previous episode, he is going to plan some kind of omnibus bulk order in the SRAM64 within the next weeks or months or something like this. And perhaps this SRAM mod is going to be available on let's say commercial base later this year or something like this. So enough about this. Let's go on and assemble one. And as you may guess, we're going to use the MK2, the MK1 board for this exercise, because I have already these two sockets on the board, and this is stock, so it comes like this, and therefore we do not have to mod a 469 board, before we can apply the SRAM64. So, and I assume this is going to be some kind of final production package or something like this. So the previous sets I have received so far were they looked a little bit different. So I got longer socket connectors, and this is indeed a very nice packaging at all. So let's have a look at it, how it looks on the inside. It's going to be a little bit loud, so I'm sorry. It's a very tough material, and I have to admit I have no idea it won't come out, so we may have to break the package. Ah, no, now I see. Okay, so inside is just the SRAM PCB, and this is attached to the outside, which makes it not that much easier to get access to it, but here we go. It's like a small unboxing session with a lot of adhesive tape. So here we go. Eventually we made it to the inner core, and what we have here are 4 connectors which are already in the exact required length, so we do not have to shorten them, but we have to have some preparation on those pins before we can go on. And the main reason is, if you have a look at the PCB, we can see that there is one row of through holes where we can attach the first connector to, and then we have 3 lines where we have just some holes at the end of the line and some kind of solder pads in between. And especially for those 3 lines, we have to prepare those connectors by simply removing the pins here in the middle or in between those through holes, because it won't fit like this. And we may have to pay some attention to because we got 2 which are similar and 1 that's a little bit different, so we cannot just go on and create 3 similar ones and then wonder why it's not going to work. So I'm using this small cutter to get rid of this legs. So we may have to pay attention that these pins are not going to go somewhere in my electronics here. So one already escaped. Because they may create some short circuits, and this is not what we are looking for, and therefore it's good to have some kind of count that we found all of them. So, and that's probably going to be the last one, or we keep this as the final row. And now it fits, as you can see. There's a little bit more in the middle of the camera. And then move on to the next row. So, next one done. Just some dress rehearsal whether it fits. Looks so good. And the third one. And then we can have some solder session. It's not going to be very difficult, but we have to pay attention to some details. There we go. This one is a bit longer than the other ones, so let's have some small rework here. I think it's fine. So now it's really important to get the alignment right, and for this I'm going to use this board and I apply all those connectors in the related positions, and then we can place the SRAM64 on it. And we have two kind of notches here so that we have the direction. But basically if we just turn it around, then we can turn it later. And now I'm just going to solder the pins that go through the PCB so that we have some kind of first alignment. But there's one important thing. If we do so, we are not able to solder the solder pads because they are blocked by the other lines. So what we really have to do now is we solder the first line, then the second line, then we get it out of this, then we solder the pads, and then we do this with the third, and then with the fourth connector line, whatever we want to call this. And this is very important because the first SRAM mod I've got, I have ignored the manual, so to say, because mans are not reading manuals, and therefore I was just going ahead and soldered everything I could solder, and then I recognized, oops, this is not going to work. So I had to desolder the connectors or the pins, and then I had to go through the steps as it is intended. And well, this could happen, and therefore it is indeed interesting to read a manual from time to time, or well, we learn it the hard way and do twice. So this is not going to be very exciting right now. Just have to pay attention that we get some proper alignment. And basically I'm not going to solder all the pins in the board because this would apply a certain amount of heat to the board, which is probably not the best way to treat this MK1, and therefore I'm just doing some kind of first alignment, solder points, and then we get this out of the board. Let's move this aside. And then I'm going to use my kind of beaten up PCB holder. The thing is that I had to modify this because most of the PCBs related to the C64 won't fit to the original kind of clamps or brackets, how we want to call this, I don't know. And therefore I had to grind them down, and therefore it has kind of a, well, rotten look right now. But it's all about the function and not the visual aspect in terms of tools. And now we are able to solder all the pins in a good way. Quite easy to access now. And the good thing is that the socket of the board will not eat up that much heat, and therefore the soldering is much easier now. You may have recognized that we have some music, and basically as usual, I would say it is from Spino 2006, something I have kind of well, forgot for the last videos, or mostly the content of the last videos was not really fitting to some background music, but now we are back with it, and unfortunately it's still the same playlist. I wasn't able to add more songs to it, but as usual it's planned, it's on my agenda, so to say, and probably for the next videos we will have a broader selection of songs, I promise. So now we have to solder the solder pads, and here it's really important that we pay attention to the detail, because we really have to create a connection between the solder pad and the pin. And since it's really hard to see, I would say, I'm using my lens with some additional light, and this makes life that much easier. And now we can solder the pads, and it's really important that we see some kind of connection, so that we not just add some soldering material to either the pin or the pad. It really has to create some kind of connection. And as you can see, it's really hard to get in between the PCB and the plastic part without melding everything together. But basically it is doable, and I think it looks very pleasant so far. Just recognize that this pin isn't looking very good, so we may have to redo this a little bit. So now it's much better. And now it's about time to add the next line. So we do a quick check. It's not hot enough, or not hot anymore. And so we can add this to the board and solder the next two pins. Get it out of the board again into our soldering station. Oops. So let's go for the next row. So the outer pins are looking very good so far. Very nice. And there's just one left. And going to be the same procedure. Solder the outer pins. And then we go for the last row. Almost the finish line. The last one is very easy because it's very close to the edge, so we have a lot of space to operate. And that's it. Just going to heat those pins a little bit so that this soldering material goes through the hole completely. Especially here in the corner where we have a huge ground connection. And the last one on this side. And then I think we are all set. So, and last but not least, we're going to have a test whether this is going to work. Already a bit dusty. And we're missing the SID on this board, but for this exercise it's probably not required, but well, let's add a SWinSID Ultimate to it so it looks a little bit more complete. And then we have to do some wiring, SVU connection, some power, and I'm not going to check every single bit by myself, so we're going to use the C64 Ultimate SRAM checker, and we need to configure this, and therefore we need something small like this screwdriver, and set this to 101011, and the test diagnostics. So the last bit is going to be the Ultimax mode, I think. Something we need to disable later on. And in order to do so, we need to get rid of my face because I need this input for my C64. Let's see, fingers crossed that we get some picture. And here we go. And as we can see, memory area 402.06 FF is okay. And now we have to disable the Ultimax mode, which was probably the wrong thing. probably the first one. Yes, indeed. Okay, and now the RAM checker is going through the whole RAM area, and as long as we can see a add in the left hand upper corner, everything is fine. Basically, I let this run for a couple of hours, basically, to see whether everything works fine, because RAM is very timing sensitive, and if we have some issues with either the soldering or the type of RAM or the connection in the socket or something like this, this may appear not within the first minutes. Basically, either the board is crashing or we get an RAM error immediately, or it looks fine at the beginning, but it may kind of deteriorate over the time. But we are not going to sit here for hours and wait until we may see something like this. For the sake of this episode, we simply consider this as successfully, and therefore we're going to switch back to my normal camera view, and I think you had some interesting moments, interesting learnings in this episode as well. And as promised, I will prepare the other SRAM mods for the older boards as well as for the 128 board. And as soon as this is done and I have tested this, we will have another episode talking about the other replacement, and perhaps we're going to learn something about how we're going to get those SRAMs modifications. I'm in kind of personal contact with the creator, and I got a few kind of pre-production samples which I have already used for several modifications, and basically I'm running out of SRAM mods, so this is the last one I've got which I need for this board. But the other ones I have received are already built on other C64 boards and already out of the house, so to say. And basically that's all. I just want to mention one thing. I have created another YouTube channel, and surprisingly it's named the very same like this channel was named before I've changed it to C64 Customs. It's Kiefer Knistern again. And this channel is purely about music with the C64. I will upload videos about music I have created, and I will upload videos about how to create music with the C64. So if this is a topic that's interesting to you, feel free to head over to Kiefer Knistern, as you may know it from a couple of weeks ago, and feel free to subscribe there as well. And I'm really looking forward to your comments. I know I'm not a musician, I'm a technical guy who is just trying to cram things together until it sounds like it's making music or something like this. I have some fun creating music, but I basically lack probably a lot of knowledge about music, but well, I'm learning, and I have perhaps a pretty special taste of music, so therefore it's not something you may listen to on a daily basis, but feel free to check the videos over there as well, and feel free to comment this. I highly appreciate this. It's just a learning curve for me as well. And as usual, this channel remains to modding of C64s and some other hardware related to C64s. Therefore everything remains the same. As usual, thank you very much for watching. See you for the next video, and have a nice day. Bye bye.